We are live, 8:31. Jordan pointed out to me I'm actually 1 minute late. Create a room by inviting others to broadcast with you. Fuck off. You know, like, why would you... Well, wait a minute. Obviously, for everyone to come in here, I just don't understand why. Now, get this stuff off the screen. Next. Okay, I don't... Jesus Christ. Like, I've done all this before. I don't know why it would start to put things on the screen after I've already started the live stream. Like, why would I want to read stuff after I'm already live streaming? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, I forgot to bring my books out here. That's okay. It's mostly me this time. Going sideways, obviously. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. So we'll go ahead and get this started. This is the second live stream for the March book for the book club, which is the Indifferent Stars Above by Daniel James Brown. So the page and pace for this one was like 9.8 pages. We were under like 10 pages, right? So today is, I don't have my watch on, so I don't know what the date is. But this took us to like page 159. So, which happens to be the very start of chapter 9 here. So we're going to be talking about chapters 6 through 9, essentially, was the reading since the last time, and there will be one more live stream just for some housekeeping, and it will be a day early. Next week's live stream will be on a Wednesday. I'm going out of town. I'm leaving Thursday to go to Leavenworth, so I won't be here Thursday night for the traditional live stream time, but I will be here for the stream. So, that being said, I want to thank you again before we begin for joining us live stream here, Instagram, Slow Streets. Obviously, I'm Donovan. Find me at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram and Slow Street on Twitter. Colin's a big bird off on both those things. SoloStreets.com for all this information. I did it in order, so I don't remember. So we're going to do this now. Okay, so the last time we're here, let's go over the story so far. So in the beginning of chapter 6, we're starting out into the desert, right? Into the Great Salt Desert. So they've gone through the Great Salt Desert. It took them several more days than they believed it was going to. I believe Lansford Hastings' letter said that it would take them 2 days and 2 nights, and it ended up taking them 4 days. So obviously they ran out of water quickly, and then the oxen ran out of water. Several people lost all of their oxen, like the majority of the Reed's oxen ran away. James Reed tried to go and find water, and then when he went to go back and find his family, he sent the teamsters and was like, you guys run my guys, my cattle, my oxen, and they lost them all. They're not the only people. The Eddies also lost a vast majority of their oxen. They finally made it across the Great Salt Desert, and then they headed into the Sierra Nevadas. They then obviously reach the bottom of some of these major peaks in the Sierra Nevadas. They realize that they're stuck there. The snow starts earlier than they believed because, as we know from this book already, they left 3 weeks too late, approximately 3 weeks too late into the season, which could, along with many, many other delays they reached along the way, definitely led to them getting here right when the snow starts. Some of the people, Rees and Tucker, as we find out, and some of the people, the Starks, and some of the other families have already made it through the Sierra Nevadas. They've already made it through this pass. They are just this close to Sutter's Ford, into whatever farm it is that everyone was staying there. I don't remember off the top of my head. And towards the end of this, in chapter 8, towards the end, the Forlorn Hope is set out, right? The Forlorn Hope is a group of 15 people, I believe, mostly men. This was the group itself that decided, instead of staying at these lake camps at Truckee Lake, because after numerous attempts to try and get into the Sierra Nevadas to get over the pass, they were unable to do so. The snow is too deep. They have pictures in here, I think a little bit farther in, of some of the stumps that are cut off, and they're, 12, 15 feet high. At some places, they're dealing with literally 30 feet of snow, which is ridiculous. So, they get stuck there. They're stuck at Truckee Lake. There's nothing they can do. They can't get out. So they set up numerous camps surrounding the lake. They describe the different cabins there. I believe that I have a little note here. Usually I have my readings already picked out. So let's see here. Gather around the blazing tree. Calculations. bogged down. Excuse me. Most of their possessions. Yes. Okay. So here we go. Despite now to get out of the snow, they abandoned the cabin. I'm sorry. I should have had this put together more. Roughly 5 miles to the northeast, the Donner brothers, their families, and their teamsters had also become hopelessly bogged down, descending a deep ridge a few days before, probably on the descent into Dog Valley. One of their wagons had overturned, briefly trapping 4-year-old Georgia and 3-year-old Eliza in the wreckage. And this is on page 121. It had taken a day of work to fashion a new axle from a pine log, a day they could ill afford to lose. To make matters worse, George Donner had cut his right hand when his chisel slipped while shaping the axle. It wasn't much of a wound, but it was already starting to get infected, and this made it difficult for him to use his hand. We talked in the last live stream about some of these stupid-ass remedies that they had, so we know an infection at this time in 1840, especially in the woods, especially in the snow, especially when you are dehydrated and calorie deficient, starving is what I'm looking for. Stupid. It's going to be bad, right? Infection in your hand is not good. The next day, they'd pushed on towards the lake in light snow. Before they'd gone far, though, they encountered messengers from the lake camp doubling back to warn them that the pass above the lake could not be crossed. The news must have stunned them. With no real alternative, they began to look for a place to make some of winter quarters. When they came to a wide meadow spread along a stream now called Alder Creek, they stopped and went to work. The Donner brothers and their teamsters began to fell trees, then to buck the logs into lengths suitable for a cabin. Working with aching, freezing hands, they notched the first set of logs and used their oxen to drag them into position. They began to stack them up, building walls. By now the snow was falling hard and fast, but George Donner could work only slowly with his left hand. Jacob Donner, his brother, frail and in failing health, could do little to help. 14-year-old Aletha Donner helped her father notch the logs while the other men felled more trees and hauled the logs to the site. By the time they had the first four courses of logs laid, though, the snow was falling at such a rate that it simply overwhelmed them. Desperate now to get out of the snow, they abandoned the cabin and began to set up canvas tents in 3 separate camps, one for each of the brothers' families and one for the teamsters. They built brush shanties covering the pine boughs, quilts, and rubber sheets. They stacked poles against a large pine tree, teepee style, and covered them with more brush. While they worked, the younger Donner children sat on logs, bundled in blankets, and snow piling up all around them. Finally, they crawled into their miserable shelters and tried to figure out what to do next. They thought they might be able to build a real cabin once the snow stopped falling. So basically, they go die. And let's see here. At Alder Creek, the Donner brothers still had most of their possessions, including a large quantity of fine fabrics that they had brought west. Including a large quantity of fine fabrics they had brought west and a considerable hoard of gold and silver coins, but unable to provide to their families with any better shelters than tents and a brush shanty. Their cash and their goods were of little use to them. Some of the young men who worked for them, those who had not gone ahead with the lake camp, had made a desperate camp a short distance from the 2 Donner family camps. As single men, they carried few possessions, though, so they had virtually nothing to fall back on. Several of the young men, we talked in the last episode, the last edition, the last live stream about women, right? It's essentially the plight of that their life was at that time, how reliant they were on other people. And it obviously is not at the same degree, but it is interesting to consider the single men, especially those that went there to work. They were hired hands for these families who now not only can't afford to, they might be able to afford to pay them, but it doesn't do you any good if you don't know that you're going to make it to California. And now, are you going to be able to depend on these people because they hired you? Are they expecting you to hunt for them? Because as we heard, especially in the case of the Donner brothers, they're old already. So their teamsters are doing the vast majority of their work. So the dependency is not the right word, because it ends up being a cooperative relationship, but out of necessity. And I am sure that there is a word for that I'm blanking on right now. But the dynamic of need is very interesting. None of these people, certainly at this point, could have made it this far without All of them. In some instances, it may have been easier because there were more food or more water or something, but um, they're all dependent on somebody for something else. These Teamsters, if everyone does survive, or if they're the only ones that survive and they don't have any money when they get to California, then they're kind of shit out of luck. Reliance, that's probably a good, yeah. Reliance, um, it's very interesting. Fucking fantasy football, come on, man. So let's see here. What was I reading? Oh, I missed my page, of course. So that's fine. We'll just move on here. We'll keep going with notes here. We got the stories of our the Perseverance, right? The Perseverance is incredible. As we start to talk about the Forlorn Hope, they start to lose. The immigrants start to lose hope at the Truckee Lake camp. Franklin Graves knows that the only way that he's going to save his family and is to try and find a way to get out to the other side of the pass, to get to Sutter's Fort, and not only repay Sutter, but to try and get more supplies, more people that are willing to travel back with him, and try and save his family. As we know already, obviously, Stanton has already made 3 trips over there. He dies on the Forlorn Hope's voyage out, the final voyage of the Forlorn Hope out of the Truckee Lake camp. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the is that choice, right? The choice that John Stanton makes, or as it's described in this book. Because one of the things that Daniel James Brown relates Stanton's life to, or that particular point in his life, is the movie Alive, or the story in the movie Alive of the rugby team that gets stuck in the mountains. And one of those team members arrives at a peak they think is the final peak, and then he realizes that it's not the final peak, and there's like a whole shitload more mountains to go, and they don't even know what to do. His mind is blown. He drops down to his knees, and he then realizes, I don't remember exactly as it is in here, so I'll find it, and we can talk about it more, because I have here we go. In 1972, in a situation much like that which Stanton, Sarah, and the other members of the snowshoe party faced, Nando Parado had a kind of epiphany, as he relates in Miracle in the Andes. It came to him in a moment of maximum despair. He and his fellow rugby players, trying to hike out of a location where their airplane had crashed high in the Andes, scaled a steep ridge that they thought separated them from safety, only to find that snowy peaks stretched away from them in all directions. Aghast at their predicament, Parado fell to his knees in the snow and took in a staggering realization. Death was the rule, life the exception. Life was at best a transitory dream, set in a universe that was entirely indifferent to his fate. Whether to cling to that fragile dream, Parado realized then and there, was up to him, as it is up to all of us, moment by moment. Whether to embrace what we are all thrust into, squealing with astonishment and rage, or to fall back into the comfortable, dark, quiet realm of the insistent. Nando Parado decided to fight for the dream. Charles Stanton, it appears, after all his heroic efforts to aid his fellow travelers, had chosen to slip back into the darkness. So, I think that is very interesting. And I hate to use the word interesting all the time, but I don't know what else to... I'm going to thesaurus the shit out of that word before the next live stream. You bet your ass. So, we're going to thesaurus in it right now is what we're going to do. So I can stop saying this stupid ass word, but I'll talk. We go. So the way that Daniel James Brown describes it as a choice, right? And he talks a few paragraphs before that about that choice, in which you can choose to continue to live, or people can also, in some instances, seem to will themselves to stop living. Charles Stanton, as we know, has not only hiked from the Truckee Lake camp, he's gone to Sutter's Fort one time and made it to Truckee Lake camp, gone back to Sutter's Fort, and then gone back to the Truckee Lake camp a second time. And now he is on his 3rd voyage out of the Truckee Lake camp. On top of, and they go through all this in the book, doing everything else that they went through, because he left from the same place that all the other immigrants did in Louisiana, or St. Joe. So I don't remember. So it's difficult to fathom exactly what he has been through, what any of them been through, because we've never been in a situation like that. I've never been in a situation like that. But his level of exertion was even greater than that of the general populace in the Donner Party, which is even more difficult to conceptualize. So I don't know. That's something that sat with me through the whole time that I've been reading this book. The second time that I'm reading it now is like, where is that line? The line of when people give up. And the line, in quotes, is referenced in a few different parameters, in a few different instances. And so one of them is people deciding that they're going to die. They're not going to do it anymore. Another one is if people decide they're going to eat somebody, right? Because I think we've talked about this already. That he mentions in the book, either already or after this, that a huge amount of people in survival situations, life or death situations, will choose to die rather than eat a person. No one could honestly answer before being in that situation whether or not they would eat a person. I don't know. I would like to think that I wouldn't, but I don't know. Maybe I would like to think that I would. I don't know. But I find myself continually going back to, like, where is that line? Like, what is the line? And we talk, even on the show and stuff, regularly about people being soft and things like that. And people are soft. I stick to that. But in a situation like this, you get hardened very quickly. So I think we would face, modern day, we would likely face that decision quicker than they did. They they definitely knew more about subsisting. They knew more about just general survival. Franklin Graves grew up in Vermont. That's how he knew how to make the snowshoes and things like that. He was like the only one that even knew how to survive in the snow because most of the people were from Kentucky. One of the other notes that I have down here while I'm thesaurusing, go thesaurus. One of the things that I have written down here is if we all lived like we faced this adversity, the country would be a better place. And I don't mean I don't even want to qualify it too much because it seems very silly, let's subjugate women. Like, I don't mean any of that, I mean, if everyone in this country lived as if their lives depended on it and they had to work as hard as they could or they might not live, this country would be a better place. Because everybody we talked about that reliance, they all had to do everything that they could and work together to try and survive. And that theme doesn't exist. Even down to just the hard-working fashion of it. They talk about some points in this book where they're going like 1 or 3 miles an entire day because they're cutting down trees and they're having to form an entire new road. And we talked in the first live stream, like, it's difficult for us to even think about moving to a different state that's already established and it's already there. I don't know that there's even a plurality of people in modern day America that could push through that type of adversity of continuously not knowing. They continuously set back and just continuing to move forward. It's difficult, People have a hard time even making it through, pushing themselves through like a harder workout than they want to, or even finishing a full workout. A lot of times, like, oh, that's enough. I don't want to do one more set. That's enough for today. And I guess that's what I'm getting at, from the small things to your workouts, whether or not you want to have a kale shake tonight or you want to read a few extra pages in your book, to trying to be the best employee that you can, or being willing to take risks, or critically thinking all of the time, putting yourself in. This is a very good but very odd example, right? He used to live across from a guy named John, and he used to go running all the time, and he used to play these weird games. It's a motivation thing. He used to play a game in his head, right, that a lot of people do, a lot of very successful, very aggressive people do, aggressive in a good way, where they pick a point in the road and they hear a car behind them, and they're like, if I don't reach this point in the road before the car does, I'm going to die. And it's a way to continue to push yourself and trick yourself almost. I hate this so much. Into working harder. And you have to trick yourself because we don't face those things anymore. I don't know. I feel like I'm talking in a very circular fashion now. I'm getting lost there, but we should all act a little more often like we might die, you know, for whatever reason. So, thesaurus.com. Interesting. You can tell I got lost before this. What do you mean there is 0 thesaurus.coms for interesting? There it is. Spelled it wrong. What are you talking about? Alluring, amusing, attractive, beautiful, compelling, curious. Curious, that's not bad. Delightful, engaging, exotic, fascinating is good. Impressive, intriguing, that's pretty good. Lovely, pleasing, provocative. Ooh, that one's good. It's provocative. Thought-provoking, unusual, stimulating. That one's funny. Captivating. Oh, that's good. Find this captivating. Prepossessing, inviting, gripping, enthralling. I used to say enthrall all the time. I did, for real. It's a good one. So, the Keaton poll, the Josh Keaton poll. Oh, god damn it, and I'm on my fucking phone. So, damn. I will have to show it during the review preview. Josh Keaton does a thing. We've talked about it before. This guy that I went to school with. He posts weird polls on his Instagram just about every day. And it's just things that he makes up. It started very silly things about, 1,000 horse-sized ducks or duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck. Things like that. What would you rather fight? I don't know. That's a very common, silly question. So it started with things like that. And now it's turned to like kind of political or social things. And one of them this week was, something to the effect of, god damn it, I wish that I would have taken this. I did not think about it. Something to the effect of, do you think that hard work translates to success? And the majority of the people said no. And I inquired to Josh, as I regularly do about these questions. I'll see the answers after I answer the poll. It's like, that's crazy. I can't believe that most of the people, because him and I know a lot of the same people, I can't believe most of the people who answer this would answer this way. That's crazy, right? So Josh says to me that it's likely in a response, or he asked a question because of something that Kim Kardashian said. And this is kind of a side, but this is just a background to the question. I guess she said something about, people aren't successful or they don't want to work hard or blah, 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 right? So it turned into this whole thing of like, well, does Kim Kardashian work hard? Does she whatever, right? So it's kind of a side. Baby Colin and I will talk about that in the show. But I found it gripping, right? That many people, and maybe most of them were thinking about it in the context of Kim Kardashian. I don't involve myself with that much, especially in the Kardashians. So that was not something that I knew about. So I suppose they could all be answering it, or most of them be answering it, thinking it be framed around Kim Kardashian. But because I didn't, I thought about it in a general sense, and I said to Josh, and expanded, and I found out that this is not so true. So I have qualified a little bit. In a free system, right? This is much more of a saying, but I think that it stands true a lot of the time. Not everyone who is successful works hard, but everyone who works hard is successful. And you have to qualify success for what that means for you, but that is across the board no matter what, right? And so it troubled me to see that type of apathy maybe in people, that they don't believe that working hard is the key to success, or that they don't believe the hard work will pay off in success. And I don't necessarily blame anyone for feeling deterred by that, because you can see someone like a Kim Kardashian or whatever who probably does work hard now because she has a brand and things and does TV shows. In all reality, she probably works hard now. But those statements and things imply that she's always worked hard and that's why she's successful, which is obviously not necessarily true. So I don't blame people for feeling that way. But we've talked in the show a lot of times about the way that I grew up in the system and things like that. And to me, hard work and perseverance is the key to everything. It's the key to success. It's the key to getting the things that you want. I know setting goals. I mean, all of these, and they're like reels or whatever. But even if you listen to people like David Goggins, Cameron Hayes, people who work hard and find success, like the answer in their instance, the key is like grinding. It's working hard. It's persevering. You need to set a goal and continue to work at it until you achieve it. And that is that. You set your mind to something and you work at it. It's something that I instill in my child and that I will instill in my next child. If he's 3 years old and we're sitting at dinner with him telling him, don't say I can't. You don't ever say I can't, because you can do anything that you want. And if you begin to tell yourself I can, you're going to limit yourself. So, I don't know. All those things seem to relate to me for some reason. It just troubled me that that's where people are at. And looking through it through the lens of Kim Kardashian, it maybe makes a little bit more sense. So maybe I'll ask Josh if he'll repose the question in a few weeks, if we can separate it from Kim Kardashian a little bit and see if that will give us a better answer. But it'll be something I'll be asking more guests about, certainly, is whether or not they think that hard work translates to success. Because I think that it does. And yeah, we'll definitely talk about this more on the show. So I'll pick a couple things in here that we'll read, and then we will get ourselves out of here. So let's see here. Okay, this is from page 161. It's getting pretty bad here, guys. It's getting real dark. This is... Let's see, the Forlorn Hope has already left. They are sitting down for the night. Immediately ahead of them now was the canyon of the North Fork of the American River. Other than the Yosemite Valley, perhaps the most dramatic feature. Ooh, that's too far. It's too far. We're not going to read that yet because it's too far. So I'm like, I don't remember reading this over the last few days. So, let's see, I know there were some points here. UVB rays. Okay, and this is the beginning of their journey here. The Forlorn Hope. So what I'm referring to, the next day, December 17th, began with what they believed would be the toughest challenge they would face, climbing the east face of the pass. The weather was bright, clear, and cold again, all they could have hoped for in that regard. Then made a little coffee, chewed a bit of dried beef, strapped on the snowshoes, and began climbing through thickly forested country toward the granite cliffs that lay beyond. At first, the going was relatively easy. Over the first mile, they gained only about 250 feet in elevation, but that modest rise brought them out of the forest and into a very different kind of landscape, one in which there were very few trees but large expanses of granite rising abruptly out of the snow. Like much of the crest of the Sierra Nevada, the landscape had been scoured by a series of glaciers over the past million years, moving ponderously downslope, sculpting out the depression in which Donner Lake now lies, and then retreating again. These glaciers had left behind a jumble of highly polished flat surfaces, house-sized boulders, deep crevices, and abrupt cliffs. After the last of the glaciers finally melted away, another 10,000 years or so of additional exposure to brutal weather had shattered much of the granite into loose talus, piles of broken rock that accumulated in deep drifts on some of the gentler slopes. To all this was now added perhaps 10 or 12 feet of snow and liberal applications of ice wherever water had run over the granite and then refrozen. They were only 3/4 of a mile from the narrow notch in the summit that constituted the pass itself, but they still had nearly 1,000 feet to climb before they reached it. 1,000 feet in 3/4 of a mile. Colin, I know that you know how terrible that is. They worked their way up among the rocks, following Salvador and Lewis. With the snowshoes strapped to their feet, they could not walk easily on rock and ice, so they tried to stay on open expanses of snow, but in intervals they were forced to cross stretches of slippery rock as the grade steepened and the air grew thinner. They had to stop more and more frequently, gasping for breath before pushing on. It's too much. I don't know. I've not even been on like that series of hikes before, So I'm unable to comprehend. I am comforted by the fact that I know that Colin is able to conceptualize it. I am unable. So I apologize for the scattered nature of this. I was not as prepared for it as prior. I did spend the last 30 minutes before this showing Jordan videos of 3D printed guns, which probably shifted my brain a little bit. But I do feel good about what we have going on here. I do also have notes for the review preview that we're filming this weekend, so I think I'm a little set. Look at that thing. Yeah, look at that. Either way, I want to thank everyone for being here. This book's incredible. It only gets darker from here, which is difficult to imagine, even though you know they're going to eat somebody. They're going to eat several somebodies. Spoilers. So we'll dig into this again. Like I said, the next live stream is going to be next Wednesday. We might try and go closer to 8 o'clock instead of 8:30. Dax is going down a little bit earlier now, so we have a little bit more free time here. So if you guys keep you guys posted on that. But other than that, I think that we will end this for tonight. I do want to thank you guys again for joining us here, Salt of the Streets, Instagram. I am Donovan from Salt of the Streets. You can find me at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram or at Big Burr. Jesus Christ. It's not good. It's really not good tonight. Salt of the Street on Twitter. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both those things. You can find all this on saltofthestreets.com. Before I make any more mistakes, I'm just going to go ahead and end this. So thank you guys. I will see you on Saturday for the episode. We've got the whole thing. It's going to be fantastic. The beer show comes out tomorrow on Friday. We have a newsletter that comes out at the end of the month. The review preview comes out on the first day of the month. That's it. That's all that I have to say. SolarStreets.com. Go to the Patreon. Subscribe. Help us make more better content. Thank you guys. Have a fantastic weekend. I will see you on Saturday. Thank you. Goodbye.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat.